The 5 lights go out for the 2008 British Grand Prix, and pole sitter Jenson Button has had a brilliant start going to Copse Corner. He's already got a gap over Kimi Räikkönen, second on the grid Kimi, third on the grid was Sato, but he's lost that to Christian Albers. Good start from the Force India driver as we go through the Maggots Beckett's. Look at the Kimi Räikkönen's already closed up that gap, so Jenson Button's early lead shrunk down to nothing as we go down the legendary Hanger Straight. Button looking round the outside going into Stowe Corner, but that is obviously not the way to go. Do what Takuma Sato's doing. He's up the inside of Albers going into Stowe Corner, and there's a big traffic jam further back, but Albers has hung on to that one. And into Club Corner, Lewis Hamilton up the inside of Sato into Club Corner, and up to 4th place goes the other home hero. We got 2 of them in this race. Jenson Button is one of them, and he's leading the race at the moment as we go on board with the Toyota driver into the Abbey chicane, 90 left followed by a 45 right, and now into Bridge Corner, which used to be a brilliant corner back in the day. The Abbey chicane sort of slowed it down a little bit, but was still fun to watch. Now we're in the final sector of the lap, going through Brooklands Corner into Luffield. Used to be a double 90-degree right-hander, but now it's a long hairpin of about more than 180 degrees actually. And the end of lap 1, Jenson Button crossing the line. Kimi Räikkönen second, third is Albers, fourth is Hamilton, fifth is Sato, and this is a battle between Ricciardo and one of the BMW Saubers. It's Nico Hülkenberg who is in 9th place. Both BMW Saubers qualifying quite well, and they're both doing quite well in 7th and 9th. Montoya 7th and Hülkenberg up in 9th place. That's Takuma Sato we are looking at, going down the Hanger Straight and into Stowe Corner he goes. And further back there's Timo Glock in 6th place, and he started 6th, so the Ferrari doing quite well as we go on board with Christian Albers in the Force India. Force India performing much better in the previous race in Austria than they have done in races before then. Maybe they've used some of their upgrade tokens to gain some speed on their car. That's side-by-side action almost between Glock and Webber going into Abbey. And I don't think Webber made that mistake as Suttle locks up his front tyres going into Abbey. He's chasing Felipe Massa. He got quite close to the Brazilian, but I don't think he made that overtake stick. He's going into Priory now into Brooklands, and in the Luffield section. So, Jenson Button, he holds a 3/4 of a second lead over Kimi Räikkönen, but he's the fastest driver on the circuit. As Lewis Hamilton challenges Christian Albers for 3rd place, he's got him into Copse Corner. So now we've got 2 Brits in the top 3. As for any of the other Brits in the field, there is Paul Di Resta. And whereabouts did he start on the grid? Well, there's his teammate Daniel Ricciardo. As into very wide through Beckett's went Takuma Sato in 5th place. And down the Hanger Straight he goes. He's got a comfortable gap over Glock, who himself is trying to defend from Mark Webber. And Webber went down the wrong side, and that's going to put him under pressure from Montoya going into Stowe Corner. And Montoya, I think, has got it. I think Webber must have overtaken Montoya at some point, because Montoya was 7th, and then off goes Daniel Ricciardo, and out of the race goes Daniel Ricciardo. Now, is that a technical problem, or was that a very, very lazy, languid mistake that he made? Let's see what comes up on the information screen. Nothing so far. It's suspension problems, so yeah. Daniel Ricciardo suffering suspension issues, and those suspension issues have forced him into retirement. It's the first one of the race. Previous thought was about Paul Di Resta. So he had started, where did he start on the grid? 17th on the grid. Toro Rosso's appear to be performing a bit better, but one of them's already out of the race, and that was Daniel Ricciardo, who'd qualified quite well actually. He had qualified way up in 11th place, and that equalled his best of the season because he had an 11th at Sepang, round 4. Renault's not performing well. Oh goodness me, Timo Glock getting well out of shape going into the final part of, well, first part of Beckett's. I think Maggots is the first left-right, and then Beckett's is the next left-right. And then Chapel is the final right-hand kink. Montoya having a look at the inside of Glock going into Stowe Corner. Can the Colombian manage it? Yes, he can. Up into 6th place goes Montoya. Now Glock has got Mark Webber chasing behind him, and Mark Webber himself has got Jules Bianchi and Nico Hülkenberg all over his gearbox. So there's a fierce 5-way scrap for 6th place at the moment. And 1.2 seconds off of that scrap is Sebastian Vettel, as Rubens Barrichello gets his line completely wrong coming out of club corner and all over the curb. He also got his line completely wrong at the Gerhard Berger curve at the last race, went very wide in the early stages of the race and crashed out. One of few drivers to crash out at the Berger curve in the last race at Austria, and they included Barrichello, both BMW Saubers, and Jenson Button, who crashed out from the race lead, although he was on a one-stop strategy and yet to pit, while his teammate and most of the field went for 2 stops. That race was won by Takuma Sato inside of somebody. It's Webber versus Glock at Copse Corner on lap 5, so Webber takes a position away from the Ferrari driver, who doesn't seem quite as quick in race trim compared to qualifying trim. That's through the Beckett's. Exiting Beckett's goes Mark Webber. Now we switch to his teammate, who's opened up a 1.7 second lead over Kimi Raikkonen. And now Glock under pressure from Jules Bianchi. So to finish my thought about the Austrian Grand Prix, the last race, as Vettel goes at the inside of Hülkenberg at Stowe Corner. It was won by Takuma Sato. That was the Japanese driver's first win of the season. Taken quite a while to get his first win of the season, but nevertheless it was a good drive from himself. He had to take that one off of Mark Webber, who himself drove quite well from pole position, but oh goodness me, I think Glock nearly got tagged by Jules Bianchi going into the Abbey curve, but surviving that one. That's Kobayashi doing a bit of curb clattering in 15th place in the McLaren BMW. And Kobayashi didn't qualify at all well, 19th, equalling his worst of the season. And he also managed the 19th at Melbourne, the first race. Nevertheless, he's raced quite well. He got an 8th at Austria last time out, 1 place behind Kimi Raikkonen, who ran 2nd in the early stages, but had to come in quite early for a mechanical drama. That was Lewis Hamilton going wide, coming out of Beckett's. Lewis Hamilton could have had a good result in Austria, but he went off at the Jochen-Rindt curve. A lot of people did. Matthias Lauda was the only one to retire from an off at the Jochen-Rindt curve, so that was unfortunate for the Honda driver. What else happened in Austria? Suttel drove well to 3rd, Webber finished 2nd. 4th in that race, it was Nick Heidfeld in the Williams BMW, then 10 points. 5th place was Fernando Alonso. And then 6th in that race was, where was it? Sebastian Vettel in the Red Bull. So Red Bull in their home race did get 1 point finish, courtesy of Sebastian. And look at this, Sebastian versus Jules Bianchi going into the Abbey curve. Now Bianchi's proving to be a bit of a roadblock because he's got Vettel, Hülkenberg, and then a Super Guri behind him. Is that Felipe Massa? I think it is actually. Fernando Alonso had a terrible qualifying session for this British Grand Prix. Way down in, where was it, 18th place. Massa was up in 10th, so wouldn't surprise me if Massa was the lead Super Guri driver in that queue. As this is Montoya versus Webber going into Copse Corner. Montoya hanging on round the outside. This is a battle for 6th place between these two. What else happened in Austria? 7th and 8th for the 2 McLarens. Kubica were on board with him right now. He drove quite well in Austria and went from, where did he start on the grid? Because it was a fair bit down. 20th place was Kubica. And he finished 9th, so good drive, and completing the point scorers from the Austrian Grand Prix was Christian Albers in the other Force India. So we had both Force Indias in the top 10 in that race. And Sato's win actually moved him to the top of the championship. Webber's got past Montoya for 6th place. You can just see it on the timing screen at the bottom as Kobayashi goes side by side with the Super Guri of Felipe Massa. And that's Sergio Perez in 12th place. So Kobayashi moving up from 15th to 13th in the past couple of laps, and now Massa comes under pressure from Alonso. And Alonso has got Nick Heidfeld right behind him as well. There's a look at Lewis Hamilton. How far is he behind Kimi Raikkonen? Was 4.3. Now it's 4.5 as he crossed the line to start his 8th lap of the race. It's still Jenson Button leading by 2.5 seconds, pulling away steadily from Kimi Raikkonen. And it's worth mentioning McLaren running the hard tyres for this race, as are the BMW Sauber team, so they've both gone hard for this race, so that puts Raikkonen's 2nd place in qualifying into some decent perspective. And I also happen to know as well that McLaren we're concentrating on race pace during practice sessions. So Kimi's second. Oh, way off the track goes Bianchi, and rejoining right into the path very dangerously in front of Nico Hulkenberg. Bianchi dropping 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 positions. Look, he's being swamped down the Hanger Straight. That's Perez past him, that's Kobayashi past him, and that's Alonso past him as well. So bad mistake there from Jules Bianchi. And Alonso himself has actually got past Felipe Massa. Massa's now dropped behind Heidfeld, so not a good past couple of laps for Felipe Massa, it seems. Yeah, he is down in 16th place. Was one of the only drivers to take on a one-stop strategy in Austria. Temporarily got up to 3rd place, but that very, very heavy fuel load dropped him way down the order come the end of the race, out of the top 10 in fact. As through bridge goes Massa, has had a podium this season. That was at the Oceanian Grand Prix. And spin goes Heidfeld. Heidfeld spinning, he's right in front of Massa, so that must be at Priory Bend. Let's see him rejoin. Is he going to turn left into Brooklands? Yes, he is. So Heidfeld making a mistake at the very quick left of Priory, and now he's got to regain his focus and try and make inroads into that queue. Well, he's a fair way back of Matthias Lauda in 17th place. He's locking up his outside tyre as Hamilton, and running wide at Beckett's goes Alonso. Now Alonso is under pressure from Jules Bianchi, but Bianchi's going to the left side down the Hanger Straight. It is often the wrong line, and he knows that. He backs out before going into Stowe Corner, and through Stowe Corner goes the Super Aguri. Look in front, because I think Vettel has just got past Timo Glock for 8th place. So Vettel on the move, both Red Bulls in the top 8. And Vettel's next target is Juan Pablo Montoya in 7th place at the moment. As through to start his 10th lap goes 2nd place driver Kimi Räikkönen. And Räikkönen is 7th place in Austria, puts him on 88 points. He's 8 points behind championship leader Takuma Sato, and he's 2 points behind race leader Jenson Button. So Button and Räikkönen staking their claim in the championship battle. There's still 5/6 of the race to go on lap 10 out of 60, as into Maggots goes Webber. And that was a bit precarious, and he knows that because he's locked up his left front going into Beckett's. And look at Montoya, he's driving quite well. He's tended to overdrive the car, as Montoya, in the season so far. He got himself involved in a collision with Fernando Alonso in the first race, then he crashed out at Suzuka, and then he crashed out at Hockenheim, and then he crashed out at Austria. So round 8, if he doesn't crash out of this one, he'll have a 50% finishing record and a 50% crashing record. He's looking at the timing screen. Perez has passed Hulkenberg somewhere, so while Hulkenberg did briefly get ahead of Sergio Perez, the Ferrari driver has taken that position back. So now we've got both Ferrari drivers in the top 10 of the race, as we are on board with Jules Bianchi, 14th place, chasing Fernando Alonso as we switch to Jenson Button through Copse Corner. Now, it suggests to me that either the Toyota is just a better set-up car than the McLaren of Kimi Räikkönen, or Toyota are also running hard tyres for this race, because McLaren definitely are running hards, and if the Toyota is quick at this stage, then it looks as if they might be running the same compound as well. I'd imagine a lot of the teams would be running the hard tyres for this one, because Silverstone is a demanding circuit full of high-speed corners, such as this one at Copse, where Kobayashi has just taken Nico Hulkenberg for 11th place. Once again, Kobayashi showing very well in the race. He's been out-qualified by Räikkönen in every race this season so far, and the gap between those two in qualifying quite high. It is 7/10 of a second, which I think is actually the highest out of any two-team drivers. Other teams which have seen an 8-0 in qualifying so far, Takuma Sato versus Matthias Lauda, that's pretty much a given considering the gulf between those two. And the gap between those two is just less than half a second, 0.476, the average qualifying gap over the 8 races. And the other 8-0, interestingly enough, is actually the Renault, because Kubica's out-qualified Barrichello in every race so far, but the average gap between those two is just 0.2 of a second across the 8 races. As for the other qualifying battles, we have got a 4-all between Hulkenberg and Montoya, but over the 8 races, Hulkenberg is the marginally quicker driver by just 0.02 of a second. We go on board with Christian Albers, who is suffering quite a bit with understeer going through the Maggots and Beckett's corners, but he does hold the advantage over his teammate Adrian Sutter, 5-3 between those two, and Albers the marginally quicker out of those two by near as makes no difference, 1/10 of a second. Ferrari, it's 6-2 to Timo Glock. Then we have got Toyota. That's an interesting one because Mark Webber has out-qualified Button, but the gaps between the two average over the 8 races. Button has been the marginally quicker qualifier, even if Webber has out-qualified him more times. There's some side-by-side action there between Kobayashi and Hulkenberg. That's the battle for 11th place. I think Kobayashi tried to get Sergio Perez going down the Hangar Straight, but once again choosing the left-hand side, which is not the correct side if you want to make an overtake. Who else have I not covered yet? The Red Bulls, that is 5-3 to Lewis Hamilton, and the gap between those two averaged out over the 8 races, 0.02 of a second, so they're nicely evenly matched. Just about. Super Aguri, it is... how far is it? 5-3 to Fernando Alonso. Got yellow flags out, so who has broken down or had a spin somewhere? Looked like just a quick spin because the yellow flags have come in very quickly. And it must have been somebody a fair bit down the order anyway. So, back to the action briefly because we have got Hulkenberg versus the Williams. That's Bianchi going up the inside and taking 13th place off Nico Hulkenberg. Talking of Bianchi, he has been out-qualified 7 times by Heidfeld. Bianchi has out-qualified Heidfeld just the once, and that was at Hockenheim. That was by a mammoth 0.8 of a second as well, so something not quite right there with Heidfeld's qualifying setup. Up the inside into 9th place goes Kamui Kobayashi, so he's now made his way past both Ferraris, and with clear track ahead of him, he can probably attempt to do something contact between the 2 Ferraris. That's a bit naughty, and their team principal won't like that at all. Glock staying ahead of Perez for the moment, but now Kobayashi, look at the gap he's pulled out over the 2 Ferraris. He's determined to try and close up a 7-second lead over Sebastian Vettel. And the rest of the qualifying battles. Paul Di Resta, well, it's 5-3 to Daniel Ricciardo, but Paul Di Resta has actually got the better qualifying, slightly quicker over the 8 races averaged out. Not by much, just a 0.03 of a second actually. And I think that's covered everyone. So, anyway, off goes the Williams. That was Nick Heidfeld, I think. So, yellow flag's coming back out because Heidfeld has come to a stop somewhere. And we should see it on the graphic if he has retired with a mechanical issue. Yellow flag's still out, and there it is. It's a puncture for Heidfeld, so tyres getting a bit too stressed. So second retirement of the race, and there it is. It is the Williams of Nick Heidfeld. So he's being pushed away through the gravel trap. I don't know whereabouts that gravel trap is, but it could be the early part of Beckett's. Perez has taken Glock for 10th place, so the 2 Ferraris swapping with each other. Glock appears to have the heavier car at this stage, and Perez appears to have the quicker car, probably the lighter car, and probably a 2-stop strategy because we're already on lap 15 and nobody has pitted just yet. Do a quick recap at quarter distance because Jenson Button holds a 4.5 second lead over Kimi Raikkonen, Hamilton third for Red Bull, and he's over 6 seconds behind Raikkonen, and Albers 8.3 seconds I think that is behind Lewis Hamilton. So the top 4 spread out quite a bit, and Sato 2.7 seconds behind Albers but only 1.8 seconds ahead of Mark Webber, so we could see a battle between those two if Webber has the quicker car at this stage. That's a Super Aguri looking up the inside of Timo Glock. That must be Fernando Alonso because Massa dropped back quite a bit. Kimi Raikkonen, or is that Kamui Kobayashi we're looking at? I think it's Kobayashi, so 6.7 seconds between himself and Sebastian Vettel in 8th place. So it's closed up a bit from that 7.1 seconds. So with clear track, Kamui Kobayashi doing quite well at this stage. Alonso has just taken Timo Glock for 11th place, so the Super Guri driver up a position. More yellow flags, so where's that one at? It was a quick spin for somebody. I wonder who that was, because... was it Timo Glock, perhaps? We may get a clue at some point. Kimi Raikkonen half a second quicker than Lewis Hamilton in that final sector, which consists, in this particular version of Silverstone, it consists of Abbey, Priory, Brooklands and Luffield. So, a bit longer third sector compared to how Silverstone was in the 2000s. And there is Sergio Perez. He's ahead of Fernando Alonso just by 1.4 seconds. And if Alonso has got the quicker car at this stage, expect that gap to shrink just a little bit. Is that Jenson Button in the background already nearly a lap ahead of Adrian Suttle and Paul Di Resta? That is some pace for Button, or these backmarkers get tripped up quite a lot in this early phase of the race. There's Suttle down the order. Where did he start on the grid? Because he was... where was he? He was 15th on the grid. So Suttle not quick at the British Grand Prix, it seems, as Hamilton goes through Brooklands and into Luffield. Turn right, keep turning right, keep turning right, loosen the steering wheel, kiss the curb on the left, and then through the right-hander kink at Woodcote. Easy flat out in these cars, and across the line to start lap number 17 in Lewis Hamilton's case as he blasts it through Copse Corner. 7.3 seconds behind Kimi Raikkonen as we look at Raikkonen's teammate. In the pits, quite an early first pit stop comes a lot from... where am I? Juan Pablo Montoya, that's the driver, and Sebastian Vettel following suit as well. Kobayashi was continuing for another lap, so he'll move up into 7th place. And he's some 14 seconds behind Mark Webber. Yeah, there is a lot of field spread in this early stage of the race. Not expecting a close race, therefore, as Jenson has a 5.4 second lead over Kimi Raikkonen, and he's been steadily growing that gap in the first 17 or so laps. As through Maggots and Beckett's goes Rubens Barrichello in the Renault. Just seeing if there's any other gamers out of that pit stop sequence. Well, Perez is up into 8th place. Fernando Alonso up to 9th. And back in the background, that was Matthias Lauda having a look at Nico Hülkenberg into Stowe Corner. As about to go a lap down is one of the 3 British drivers in the field, Paul Di Resta. And he's going to go a lap down on one of the other British drivers in the field, race leader Jenson Button. And the 3rd British driver is in the pits, Lewis Hamilton. So he'd made his way through the field thanks to a slightly lighter fuel load compared to the rest of the field, as Kubica defends his place from that Force India down the Hangar Straight. It must be Adrian Suttle, because Christian Albers is up there in 3rd place at the moment. And that is 3rd because Hamilton has just come into the pits for his first pit stop, as is Kamui Kobayashi, as has Sergio Perez. So we are in deep the first pit stop strategy window. And pretty much 2 stops for those pitting early, as through Abbey goes Jenson Button, and then coming into Abbey goes Kimi Raikkonen, some 6 and a bit seconds, is that? Yeah, 6 and a bit seconds behind Jenson Button, so Raikkonen's lost a bit of time on this lap. Must have made a mistake somewhere. That's Hamilton rejoining in 6th place, ahead of Fernando Alonso. Into the pits comes Jenson Button, so either Kimi Raikkonen did make a brief mistake in the mid-sector of the lap, or Jenson Button was pushing really hard before his first pit stop, and Kimi Raikkonen briefly takes the lead. So now Kimi Raikkonen was on a heavier fuel load compared to Button. By how many laps we'll find out soon, but at least 1 lap longer than Button. And through Abbey goes quite a lot of the field. That is Lewis Hamilton, 7th, then Jules Bianchi, then Barrichello. Now through Copse goes Christian Albers, now the 2nd place driver, Christian Albers, because Jenson's in the pits, dropping a bit down the order, but now Sato 3rd, Webber 4th, and Jenson Button probably should rejoin in 5th, is that? Yeah, 5th place. So he's ahead of Fernando Alonso. They're expecting Jenson to have quite a bit of clear track in front of him. As through the hanger straight. This is Sato versus Webber. This is a genuine battle for position. And Webber once again choosing the left side. That was his left, our right, which is the wrong side going into Stowe corner. There's Kimi Räikkönen. And now look at that going into club corner. Sato versus Webber. And Sato defending that one quite hard because he needs track position over the Australian. It was a brief shot of Kimi Räikkönen going through Luffield now. Is he going to turn right into Woodcut? Into the pits he comes. So 1 lap longer than Jenson Button. Kimi Räikkönen slows down to the pit lane speed limit as through Copse goes Perez under pressure from one of the wranglers. Now we switch to Matthias Lauda, who's in 11th place. That going through club corner, I think it is. Briefly in 11th because he's not yet made a pit stop. Roll over the curb at the exit. Now is Alba's going to take the lead of the race because Kimi's in the pits? Yes, Alba takes the lead. So we've got a Force India leading at the moment. And we've got a Honda. Oh, Webber's just passed Sato. Webber's just passed Sato for seconds. That would have been going into Copse corner. So now the Toyota driver has the track position advantage over the Honda driver. And of course, remember, there is a grudge match going on between Honda and Toyota. Two Japanese giants going virtually head-to-head for the Constructors' Championship, but there is an outlier in amongst them. It is the McLaren. And that McLaren of Kimi Räikkönen and Kamui Kobayashi. If you have a look at the standings briefly, it's 159 points for Toyota, 120 for McLaren and 118 for Honda. So it does look as if the Constructors' Championship is going to be between those three teams. As for the drivers, well, early days, but 4 drivers in with a chance of the championship, and they are Takuma Sato on 96 points, Jenson Button on 90 points, Kimi Räikkönen on 88 points, and Mark Webber on 69 points. And at the moment, all 4 of those drivers are in the top 5. As wide goes, off the track goes Kimi Räikkönen, pushing hard on his outlap, and pushing too hard at Priory. So 4 out of those 5 drivers are in 4 out of those 4 drivers, I should say, in the top 5 at the moment. But none of them are leading because Christian Alba's yet to make his first pit stop. He is leading at the moment. In second at the moment is Mark Webber and third is Sato, but both of those have a pit stop to make. So they're going a little bit longer than Button and Räikkönen. That mistake cost Räikkönen a good 2 and a bit seconds, I'd say. As we have a look at Montoya going through Luffield. Montoya having made a pit stop, currently sitting in 13th place at the moment on those hard Pirelli tyres. And he is 10 seconds behind Nico Hülkenberg. Not exactly losing much time to the German, but once everyone makes their pit stops, we should see Montoya back into the top 10. That's going through Abbey. You can tell because of the way those curbs are laid out, like concrete strips rather than the blue and white ripples. Through Beckett's. That's another example of those concrete slabs instead of curbs. As into the pits comes Christian Albers. And Mark Webber, in fact. And is Sato going to follow through? Or is he going to take the lead? He is going to take the lead, briefly. That was a Red Bull making a bit of a lock-up going into club corner. It's Sebastian Vettel we're looking at, and he has got Felipe Massa right behind him. And right behind those two, Kamui Kobayashi, Massa having a look going into Abbey, but Vettel very aggressive with his defence. So Sato, yet to make a pit stop, leads. So Jenson Button is the true leader. And the gap between those two, 2.3 seconds. Who else is making a pit stop? Because we've got Hülkenberg making up positions. It's Matthias Lauda into the pits. So that's why Hülkenberg's gained a position. And look at that. Ninth, and that's somebody going slowly. That's Mark Webber going quite slowly. That must have been at pit exit. And he's behind Christian Albers. Okay, that's correct, actually. So Mark Webber, well, he was making his way through the field earlier on, but really his battle is with Takuma Sato. And of course, Albers was running ahead of this lot before he made his pit stop. And in fact, the true net third of the race is in fact Lewis Hamilton. He currently sits in 5th place. It's only 1.3 seconds behind Fernando Alonso. and Alonso should be making his pit stop soon. So the true order really is Jenson Button, Kimi Raikkonen and Lewis Hamilton. That's the true top three of the race, because we think that Sato, Alonso, Bianchi and Barrichello, those are the four drivers in the top 7 which haven't made pit stops. Make that 3 out of the top 7, make that 2 out of the top 7, because Alonso and Barrichello are both in the pits. That'll move Christian Albers back up to briefly 6th place, but that should become 4th once Sato and Bianchi make their pit stops. But if Sato continues to stay out for a bit longer, then he might do something about Albers. We'll keep an eye out on that one. At the moment we're looking at Sato versus Button. That was going into Club Corner. Now we switch to Mark Webber going through Maggots, then Beckett's, the final right of Beckett's before the left of Chapel, and onto the Hangar Straight. Isn't it nice that you can actually call these corners by names and not numbers? Take note, giving corners names gives them a bit of character. Webber's just taken Glock somewhere. He's moved up a position. That's on track instead of Glock making a pit stop. I wonder if Glock's doing the one-stop strategy again, because he tried that at Austria and it didn't work quite as well as he'd hoped. Speaking of one-stops, I wonder if Sato's doing the same thing. He's got Jenson Button closing in on him. That was by 4/10 in that final sector. So yeah, there could be another mix of strategies going on in this race. We don't get that information before the race begins, so that's always an air of mystery going into the races. Certainly makes commentating on it quite interesting, because you see some drivers making up the order and they go, didn't know they were on that strategy, but anyway. Sergio Perez versus Robert Kubica, that's going through the Abbey curve, underneath the bridge and then out of it for the bridge corner. And Hamilton getting a bit out of shape going through Maggots and Beckett's, and that's going to put him under pressure from Jules Bianchi going down the Hangar Straight. Can Bianchi do it round the outside? He's got enough of an overlap and he's taken that position away from Lewis Hamilton. Remember, Bianchi has got a pit stop to make, so he is much lighter on fuel compared to the Red Bull driver. And depending on how long he stays out, he could be running a one-stop strategy as well. That's Barrichello getting all crossed up, exiting Copse Corner. Now he goes through Maggots and Beckett's. That's coming out of Beckett's now, and then into Chapel. You can see a hospitality suite on the right-hand side as we go underneath the Olympus Bridge. Goes downhill a little bit. Very subtle gradient. And Jules Bianchi going through Brooklands Corner. Now we switch to Alonso coming out of Club Corner. Superguri's not showing very well in this race. They're Masso down 10th for qualifying and Alonso way down the order. And at the moment both drivers are out of the points. Bianchi into the pits, so that will put Lewis Hamilton back up to 4th place. And Christian Albers, he's only 3.6 seconds behind Hamilton, and Hamilton himself is some 15.7 seconds behind Kimi Raikkonen, who is starting to close up on Jenson Button now. He's now less than 6 seconds behind the Brit. Button may well be feeling a bit held up behind Takuma Sato, so that could explain some of Raikkonen's pace. Again, Raikkonen could be pushing very hard. He did briefly go off at this corner here, and Massa trying his best to go off the corner, but his car won't allow it. He's got Adrian Sutil clambering all over his gearbox. And Massa way down the order. He's not particularly quick in this race. Neither is Adrian Sutil. And who is behind those two? Is it Paul Di Resta? These two are down in 19th and 20th place. This is actually the battle for last. And Sato, he comes into the pits. That's at the end of lap 25. It's a bit too early for a one-stop strategy, but a bit too late for a two-stop strategy. So, a bit of a curious one for Sato. But let's see what he does in this midsection of the race as we approach the second half of the race. In fact, Jenson Button still leads the race, and what's the gap between himself and Kimi Raikkonen? We'll find out once Raikkonen crosses the first sector point. Hamilton back up to third. The gap between Button and Raikkonen is 5.7 seconds, and Hamilton was some 15 seconds behind Kimi. So he's not in the battle for the lead, but he's certainly in contention for a podium place. We've got Hulkenberg into the pits as well, so he's dropping down the order thanks to his pit stop. So he was another one who ran quite heavy for this race. As into Abbey, and once again missing the apex quite some way is Kimi Raikkonen, and pushing very hard to try and catch up to Jenson Button. Just quickly on Hulkenberg, he started 9th, Montoya had started 8th on the grid. Montoya's still there in 8th, but Hulkenberg on a heavier run in the first stint has now dropped quite a way down the order. And Hulkenberg did struggle a bit in that opening set of laps. Now this is Lewis Hamilton. Hits the apex very nicely going through Priory. And even better than that through Brooklands actually. As he turns right at Luffield, but at the moment he is a bit slower than Raikkonen at this stage, although Raikkonen did lose more than half a second with that brief mistake at the Abbey chicane. Kubica has just exited the pits after a pit stop, and he's now in last place behind Adrian Sutil. How far off as Sutil is he? Some 7 seconds or so. Actually, I'm wrong. That is less than 3 seconds behind Adrian Sutil. That is a McLaren in front. That is Kimi Raikkonen, so well, maybe he is actually 7 seconds behind Sutil. Graphics are quite tricky for me to read. I'm looking at it from a distance. This is Sergio Perez we are looking at. And he is exiting at Woodcote Corner. He's in 14th place at the moment behind Rubens Barrichello, and he's lapping about the same pace as the Brazilian as Button comes up to lap somebody. I think that's Felipe Massa that is lapping. As through Luffield goes Adrian Sutil. That just tells you how far back Sutil is compared to Massa. Actually no, who was Jenson Button lapping? No, it was Felipe Massa. I was at the wrong part of the lap. Through Brooklands goes Lewis Hamilton, 16.5 seconds behind Kimi Raikkonen, and exiting Luffield, and tiny straight before Woodcote Corner as we switch to Kimi Raikkonen going through Beckett's. Looking a lot cleaner than he was through Abbey a few laps ago. As we switch to Adrian Sutil, that's approaching Stowe Corner. And he is a fair bit down the order. He's down in 19th place behind Felipe Massa. He's not too far behind Massa though, as Albers misses the apex of the final Beckett's as he exits Chapel now onto the Hangar Straight. He's 3.8 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton, and just behind those two you've got a battle for 5th between Mark Webber and Takuma Sato. The gap between those two is just half a second. Keep an eye out on the background as we go through Club Corner. There it is. Sato not close enough just yet, but he does seem quicker than Webber at this phase of the race. So it makes me think that Sato's sticking with a 2-stop strategy, but it was a long first stint. That's why he was able to lead briefly. And it's why he seems a bit quicker than Webber at this stage of the race. I'd sort of assume that Hulkenberg is doing the same thing, because he was another one on a long first stint. And it'd be a bit risky to try a one-stop strategy at this sort of circuit, full of fast corners, and you'd lose quite a lot of time in the high-speed stuff. That's your race leader Jenson Button, 6 seconds ahead of Kimi Raikkonen. That gap remaining at 6 seconds as Kimi goes through the first sector point. That was Vettel hacksawing away at the wheel as he chases Juan Pablo Montoya for 8th place. Both of these two in the points. Be good for Montoya if he got some points. He's had a bit of a wretched season. He's down in 19th in the championship, having scored just 11 points. And considering the season he had last time out, 11 points doesn't sound a lot. That consists of a 10th at Sepang, a 8th at Monaco, and the 7th at Adelaide. And that's it. The other 4 races he's crashed out of. And he's just lost 8th place to Sebastian Vettel, so Vettel on the move, but at least Montoya's still in the points for now. He has got Kobayashi not far behind either, so Montoya could be losing another place soon. Was one of the first to pit, and it seems as if his middle stint's not going quite to plan. Round Luffield goes Mark Webber in 5th place at the moment. He's just starting to pull away a little bit from Sato. He's now 9/10 of a second. Well, we'll get an update as Webber crosses the start-finish line. Well, it's just gone down to 0.8 of a second. And as into the pits comes Timo Glock. So, is that his first stop or is that his second stop? So I'll lose track a little bit. But anyway, from 7th place comes Timo Glock, and look how close that was. I was about to say there's a pretty dicey three-way scrap between Vettel, Kobayashi and Montoya. And Kobayashi has just taken Montoya. That was going into Copse corner. So we are seeing some overtaking going into Copse and also into Stowe, depending on what line you take. Any other overtaking opportunities? Well, you've got into Abbey and a potential one at Club if you're feeling brave. 20th and last place at the moment, that is Paul Di Resta, the third British driver on the grid, and the only Scotsman in the field. Jenson Button race leader from Frome in Somerset, or Froome I think you pronounce it. Lewis Hamilton third from Stevenage, Hertfordshire. In between those two is Kimi Räikkönen, 6.3 seconds. He's from Espoo in Finland. 4th place Christian Albers. Not sure where he's from, but I do happen to know that Mark Webber is from Queanbeyan, which is near Canberra. Montoya's just retaken Kobayashi for 8th place somewhere. So that's Vettel we're looking at. So just see in the background there is Montoya now back ahead of Kobayashi. And is Kobayashi still there? He isn't. Well, yeah, he's sort of there. So I suspect that Kobayashi's made a mistake going through Priory or into Abbey, and Montoya's capitalised on that. The gap between Kobayashi and Alonso as they crossed the line was absolutely nothing. So that's another battle, Kobayashi versus Alonso, and Bianchi's not that far behind them either, just 1.6 seconds. So there's a bit of a battle for 7th to be decided for this race. And we are seeing quite a field spread. Not sure if there's a battle for the lead, but Kimi Räikkönen doing his best to try and hang on to Jenson Button in this midsection of the race. It's 6.2. Hamilton fairly on his own. He's 19 seconds behind Räikkönen. 3.8 ahead of Christian Albers. But now Albers is becoming under pressure from Mark Webber and to a certain extent Takuma Sato. So it could be a three-way battle for 4th in the next few laps. That could be decided in the second pit stop sequence. And then we've got a hot battle for 7th between Vettel, Montoya, Kobayashi, Alonso and Bianchi. That's side by side. Kubica taking Massa going into Stowe. And Massa all over the curves at the exit. So the Renault driver on the move. As we switch to Kimi Räikkönen, who is pretty much a lap ahead of those two. Look in front, Kobayashi, a bit wide at Copse as he got Alonso alongside him. I think that was why he missed the apex. Webber's just taken Albers for 4th, so there is a battle for 4th, sort of decided for the moment as Kobayashi gets a lot of understeer at Beckett's. Now, is that going to put him under pressure from Alonso down the hanger straight? It probably will do. But there in the background, Mark Webber ahead of Christian Albers now. And Alonso has taken the correct side going into Stowe corner. He knows how to do it. And he's taken 9th place off of Kobayashi. Now Kobayashi has got Jules Bianchi lurking large. Is Jules going to make a move? He probably will do. As Di Resta has a look at Felipe Massa for 19th place. That's a battle for the last. So Di Resta, he got some cheer, some small consolation, but points are quite a long shot because at the moment we've only had 2 retirements and we've gone past half distance now. What we're looking at, that is Hülkenberg in 13th place under pressure from Sergio Perez. And behind those two is Matthias Lauda in 15th place. Somewhere ahead of this lot is Rubens Barrichello. He's not done too badly. He had qualified 21st. And the last was actually Lauda. There he is in 15th place now. So he's gained some positions, but not as many as Barrichello. Barrichello up from 21st to 12th. I wonder how far he is behind Jules Bianchi. Well, Bianchi is only a 10th behind Kobayashi, and surely must be shaping up for a move anytime soon. Switch back to Nico Hülkenberg, who had an extremely messy... Look at that, Perez trying to go around the outside through maggots, but backing out of that one as Hülkenberg turns right. Yeah, Hülkenberg had a very, very messy Austrian Grand Prix. Seemingly struggling with his car a bit, locking up a lot, struggling with his brakes, and driving on wheels which were pretty much square for a lot of his race, and then eventually crashed out at the Burger Curve. Burger Curve would be turn 7, the second of the two left-handers in the middle of the circuit. Through Copse Corner, that's Lewis Hamilton. He's 21 seconds behind Raikkonen, who is still closing the gap a little bit, and Jenson Button. 5.6 seconds, the gap between those two. I do wonder actually, did Raikkonen take on less fuel than Button in his first pit stop? Because that first stint, Button was pulling away from Raikkonen with 1 lap less fuel than the Finn. And now Raikkonen closing in on Button makes me suggest that Raikkonen short-fueled it a bit, and Button took a bit more fuel on board. So I think the upper hand does belong with Button, looking good to take victory in front of his home crowd. With 2 Brits on the podium, these fans will go nuts. Exiting Woodcut, that is Adrian Sutil. He is 4.3 seconds behind Glock. Make that 4.373. He lost 1,000th of a second to the German on that final sector. That is colossal. Maggots and Beckett's, Kimi Raikkonen, left, right, left and then right again. Now we switch to Sebastian Vettel, who's pulling away comfortably now from Montoya. Well, it was 2.6, now it's 3.3, so Vettel looking quite decent now in 7th place, but that looks as if it's as far as he'll go, unless the top 6 have mechanical issues. Now then, Hamilton's being caught up by Mark Webber. Webber's now less than 2 seconds behind the Red Bull driver, so Hamilton's race for a podium looks a little bit more precarious because Webber is on the move. And he's dragging Albers with him as well. Well, kind of. Albers just lost 0.4 of a second in a sector somewhere. And, well, in fact, that's put Albers under pressure from Sato. Sato less than 0.4 behind the Force India driver now. We did briefly look at Hamilton, now we switch to Matthias Lauda versus Sergio Perez, going through Copse Corner and coming out of Copse into the... Ooh. On a spin goes Albers! Albers losing that 5th place to Sato, locked up and lost his car. So that makes Sato's job of overtaking the Force India driver a hell of a lot easier. Now there's been a bit of a shuffling of position. Alonso's taken Montoya and Bianchi has taken Kobayashi somewhere. So, 3 changes of position on this 36th lap of the race. Through Club Corner, could there be a 4th different overtake of the race in this lap? Because Sergio Perez trying to get a good slipstream on the back of Matthias Lauda and thinking about outbraking him on the inside but not quite managing that. Hulkenberg going through Bridge and now Priory. One of the later ones on a 2-stop strategy, pitted pretty much at the same time as Sato. Sato is about 9 or 10 laps later than Montoya, who himself has just lost another position, this time to Jules Bianchi. So Montoya's starting to struggle now in this mid-phase of the race. I wonder if he took on a heavier fuel load at the first pit stop. He was an early one to pit as well. There's Barrichello in 12th place, and he's only 2.6 seconds behind Kobayashi. We'll make that 2.9 as he crosses the first sector point. Yeah, Barrichello, if things go well for him, he may get a point, but how much fuel has that Renault got compared to the people in front of him? If he does get a point out of this race, that would be a good drive from the Brazilian. Alba's now in 6th. He's fairly comfortable in 6th. I think that's more or less secured, barring reliability issues for himself or the people in front of him. And Vettel 3.4 seconds ahead of Alonso. Lead gap 5.2 seconds now, but we are approaching the second round of pit stops, and I'm sort of expecting Kimi Raikkonen to pit first out of these two this time. Here we look at the side profile of Raikkonen as he goes from 5.2 to so still 5.2 but a bit less. Webber's just taken Hamilton, that was the overtake we just saw. Mark Webber moving up into 3rd place, as off the track goes Kobayashi, struggling to hang on to that McLaren. And zip goes Barrichello. Barrichello up to 11th place. That was exiting Copse Corner, I think, because is now at Maggots and Beckett's is Kobayashi, now exiting Chapel onto the Hanger Straight. So although he showed well in the early part of the race, Kobayashi is starting to struggle in this mid phase of the race, like Montoya. And I think Kobayashi was one who pitted relatively early as well. That was Kimi Raikkonen putting a lap on the Ferrari of Timo Glock. As Takuma Sato, well, how far behind Hamilton is he? He's 4.3 seconds behind Hamilton. So Webber's just shot off into the distance now that he got past Sato and Albers and Hamilton. 7/10 off of Webber now is Lewis Hamilton. And missing the apex is Kobayashi. This has not been a good lap for the Japanese driver. Going wide at Copse, losing the position to Barrichello, and later on in the lap making another mistake. Through Luffield goes the Japanese driver, and through Woodcut goes the Japanese driver. How far is he behind Rubens Barrichello? It's 1.5 seconds. So, yeah, Kobayashi pushing a bit too hard in this mid-phase of the race. As we look at Adrian Sutter, he's way down the order. And now we look at Montoya wrestling the car through, is that Maggots and Beckett's next in Chapel? It is, as he goes onto the Hanger Straight. He lost 1.3 seconds in that first sector. Look at Barrichello. Barrichello making the move on Montoya to move into the points. So, once again, Renault showing quite well in the race. Even though they're not showing particularly well in qualifying, they're racing quite well. Barrichello in 10th place now, as Vettel goes through Abbey, and he's being caught by Alonso now. 2.5 seconds the gap between those two. So Vettel's 7th position, not exactly safe. We are nearing the approach to the second round of pit stops. We're nearing lap 40. Who is going to be the first to blink, I wonder? That was Kobayashi making another mistake at that point. And as he just lost the position to... He's lost a position to Hulkenberg, so Hulkenberg, or is it Montoya? Montoya up into... and off the track goes Bianchi. So we're starting to see a raft of mistakes being developed by these drivers now. We've seen Kobayashi do quite a few in the past couple of laps. Now we've seen Bianchi make a bit of a mistake at Copse Corner. I think it was Montoya who had overtaken Kobayashi. Jenson Button, no such mistakes from him so far. Gap's still 5.2 seconds between himself and Kimi Raikkonen. As Mark Webber in 3rd place, he's pulling out a gap of 2.2 seconds over Lewis Hamilton. So Webber looking good for a podium finish if he carries on like this. Albers going through Brooklands Corner. And now into Luffield. He is in 6th place, fairly comfortable in 6th now, having been passed by Sato thanks to that spin at Abbey Corner. Now we go a bit further back. Vettel losing a lot of time in this second part of the race, particularly to Fernando Alonso. 1.6 seconds the gap between those two, as through the Abbey chicane went Jenson Button. Now into Brooklands goes Nico Hulkenberg. We're seeing quite a lot of different drivers in very quick succession at this moment. For the moment we'll stick to Nico Hulkenberg, and now we switch to Jenson Button on lap 40, going through Luffield Bend, and he's drifting it to the outside, so he's going on for another lap, as is Kimi Raikkonen. So both of those two looking fairly content in 1st and 2nd place, but Kimi Raikkonen the quicker driver at this part of the race, although not in that final sector. He'd lost a 10th and a bit. Just trying to see if there's any incoming battles between the top 11. Well, I think the best we can hope for in the next few laps is Vettel and Alonso. They're only 1.3 seconds between them. Jules Bianchi in 9th place now. He could get some points. When did he last get some points? I think it must have been Suzuka when he got that 4th place. Yeah, it was, and he had a 9th place at Adelaide, which could have easily been a lot more than that, but he crashed out in the closing stages at Brewery Bend. That's the fast right going onto the back straight. And we got a pit stop happening. This is Fernando Alonso. So the reason why he was quickly catching up to Vettel, he had less fuel as Perez goes a lap down on Button going through Priory Bend. And through Luffield goes the Ferrari driver. And then through Luffield goes Kimi Raikkonen. Button going on through another lap. And is Kimi going to do the same thing, or is he going to duck into the pits for a pit stop? I don't think he was. I think he's going to continue on for another lap. And now he's got the gap to less than 5 seconds between himself and Jenson Button. Kobayashi 10th, Montoya 11th. That battle not quite settled just yet. Gap is just 0.6 of a second between those two. And it's probably a battle for the final point. As down the hanger straight goes Button, and into the pits comes Mark Webber. So Webber the first out of the top lot to pit for the second time. That'll briefly move Lewis Hamilton back up to 3rd place. Now, can Hamilton do something about that gap that Webber had built up over himself? And more importantly, can Webber rejoin in clear air? Because if he rejoins in traffic, then that'll put him under pressure from Hamilton, as into the pits comes Hamilton's teammate, Sebastian Vettel. Through bridge goes Button, and through Priory. Looks as if he'd hit the apex quite well. But that's Takuma Sato. 2 seconds now behind Lewis Hamilton, and I believe he is catching up to him. Webber rejoins in 6th, somewhere behind Christian Albers. How far is the gap between those two? But I do suspect that Webber is in clear track. And Kimi Raikkonen into the pits from 2nd place. As I thought, on a lighter fuel load compared to Button in the middle stint, Raikkonen is the first one to pit between those two. Target to get out in front of Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton is some 20 odd seconds behind. So that's the aim for McLaren as we go on board with the Ferrari of Sergio Perez. Way down the order, not really relevant in this race now. He's last, in fact. He must have made a pit stop. So Hamilton 3rd. Where is Kimi Raikkonen in relation to the Red Bull driver? There goes Kimi, he's rejoined ahead. So Kimi, that was important for him. Didn't need to get stuck behind the Red Bull, although the Red Bull would have pulled away a little bit on a lighter fuel load. And Mark Webber, 17 seconds behind Albers, and a little bit in front of Bianchi, so yeah, it is some nice clear track for Webber to try and stay ahead of Hamilton. As that was Kobayashi coming into the pits, and Barrichello into the pits as well, as is Nico Hulkenberg. So now we are well into the second round of pit stops. And through Luffield goes Sebastian Vettel. So where is he? He should rejoin ahead of Kobayashi as Button puts a lap on Matthias Lauda. So that's 9th place Lauda actually, so yeah, Button flying a bit. And Kimi Raikkonen, he'd lost about 28 seconds over Jenson Button. I wonder if he got held up a little bit by the Ferrari, which was a lap down. Exiting the pits. As through Abbey, that's Mark Webber. Currently in 6th place. And looking to try and keep up the pace so that he can rejoin, he can stay ahead of Lewis Hamilton once the Red Bull driver makes his final pit stop. Glock in 12th, he's got the 2 Renaults all over the back of him. And that's Barrichello having a look. Barrichello in front of Kubica, and Kubica, well, Barrichello's the quicker driver out of the 2 Renaults in this race. Barrichello has made his 2nd pit stop. Not sure about Kubica. Kubica is he's going to try and do something about his Brazilian teammate. Bianchi's in the pits. So he'll drop down a bit down the order. Briefly move Montoya up into 7th, but I think the Colombian has got a pit stop to make. Montoya has pretty much done half a tank, half the race on one stint. So yeah, that's quite an interesting strategy that the BMW Sauber has taken. lot louder into the pits as well. So having just gone a lap down to Button, now he's going to go even more than a lap down. That was Bianchi right in front of Vettel. So Bianchi's jumped Vettel at this pit stop sequence. Just about. We have a look at a Super Aguri, and Vettel's not going to take that one lying down. He's going to try and retake Bianchi, going to hang her straight into Stowe, and Vettel has just taken that. So all the good work by Bianchi, and it's Vettel who has undone that for him. Understeering through the exit of Beckett goes Suttle, way down the order in the 18th place. Makes me wonder if the Force India have gone for a softer tyre for this race. Although with Suttle, I don't think he's been on the pace really. Is that Hamilton in the pits, or is that Sato getting ahead of Hamilton? Yes, Sato's just passed Hamilton on track for 3rd place. I mean, it'll become 4th once those two make their pit stops, so that's Hamilton's quest for a podium even more tricky. Montoya's into the pits. A meaty old middle stint for the Colombian, and he's going to drop down the order quite a bit actually, because, well, having ran in 7th, he did drop down quite a lot of positions in that mid-sector of the race. Yeah, he's behind Timo Glock even. Just keeping an eye out between Jenson Button and Kimi Raikkonen, because Button's not made his 2nd pit stop yet. I think he should do in the next few laps or so, but Kimi Raikkonen's starting to close in that gap on his new tyres as Christian Albers comes into the pits from what was 5th place. That'll move Webber back up a position. Now will that move Alonso? I don't think it'll move Alonso up a position. So I think Albers looking set for 6th place if things go to plan. Yeah, we're having a look at Sebastian Vettel. He's not that far behind Bianchi. Bianchi has not given up on the Red Bull driver's 8th place. And keep an eye out for when Albers exits the pits. He should be comfortably ahead of Alonso. As we look at last place, Felipe Massa. And that's a comfortable last, 8.1 seconds behind Paul di Resta. I think Albers has rejoined the circuit now. Should see him cross the 1st sector point anytime soon as we look at Kamui Kobayashi. Now down in 13th place behind Kubica in the Renault. But Kubica, I think, has just made a pit stop because Kobayashi's back up to 12th place. Yeah, there's confirmation of Kubica in the pits. So Kobayashi 12th, Block now 11th. And if he's taken a one-stop strategy, then Kobayashi has got some overtaking to do. Sato and Hamilton into the pits. That should move Webber back up to 3rd place. And we await for that. Jenson Button. That was him going into the Abbey corner. And he's a lap ahead of Fernando Alonso, but bear in mind that Button and Alonso have got pit stops to make. That should move Vettel, who is still trying to stay ahead of Bianchi, and he's a second ahead now. In fact, Webber's in the pits. So Webber, well, is that a mechanical issue for the Toyota driver? Because he's already made his 2nd pit stop. Well, that's scuppered his chances for a podium finish. So Sato now a net 3rd, and Hamilton 4th, Christian Albers 5th, and Mark Webber, I think he should be 6th place because Alonso is a fair way behind. So more bad luck it seems for... No, Alonso has taken Webber. So more bad luck for the Australian. And he's lost position to Vettel as well, so terrible luck for Webber. So a 3rd pit stop unscheduled. So that'll dent Toyota's constructors' points charge a little bit. Not by huge amounts because Button is leading, and if it stays like this then Toyota would be extending their lead of the championship. Through Bridge Corner. That was Takuma Sato. Felipe Massa, last place. Kubica now 19th in the Renault, so whatever strategy he's done has not worked at all. And Kobayashi has just taken Timo Glock for 11th place. So how far behind Barrichello is Kobayashi? Barrichello is less than 3 seconds behind Bianchi, and Bianchi himself less than a second behind. Now it's Mark Webber, and Kobayashi is 4 seconds off of Barrichello. Button into the pits. Jenson Button into the pits for his second pit stop, leaving it a lot later compared to most of the field. Probably the last driver to make a pit stop. And Kimi Raikkonen had closed the gap. It was 30 seconds before Button came into the pits. So keep an eye out for that one. In fact, when did Button make his first pit stop? I think it must have been lap 18 or 19. So Button pretty much doing half a race stint. Half the race on one stint. Well, Kimi's just crossed the start-finish line now, and Jenson Button just exiting the pits now, so Jenson I think has retained the lead over Kimi Raikkonen. There'll be a lot less than 26 seconds according to the graphic. And Sato, he's 34 seconds behind Kimi Raikkonen, so the race has just been about Button versus Raikkonen. And I'll tell you what, Jenson only just hung on to the lead from Raikkonen. It's 7/10 of a second as they cross that first sector point. It's a very risky strategy from the Toyota, but it's just about paid off, and on newer tyres I'd expect Button to pull away now from the McLaren BMW. And there is your 6th place driver, Fernando Alonso, looking to try and hold off Sebastian Vettel in the closing stages, I think. Vettel does seem quicker than the Spaniard, but I'm pretty sure Webber would be even quicker than both of them combined. Yeah, I think Jenson pulled out 4/10 over Raikkonen in that middle sector, so yeah, risky strategy from the Toyota team, but it's just about paid off. Now all Jenson has to do is control the final stint, a short final stint. It's going to be about 12 laps in this stint, because Jenson's just gone on to lap 50. 11 laps to go now, and the gap is 1.3 seconds between Button and Raikkonen. There's 8th place Mark Webber, missing the apex of Stowe Corner, all over the curbs at the exit, as he pushes hard to try and catch up to Sebastian Vettel. 9th place is Jules Bianchi, 10th is Rubens Barrichello. So let's count them in the points. We've got a Toyota, 2 of them in the top 10. We've got 1 McLaren, 1 Honda, 2 Red Bulls actually, then a Force India, a Super Aguri, a Williams and a Renault. So I think we've got 8 different teams in the top 10, and 3 teams which don't have a driver in the top 10. They consist of Ferrari, BMW Sauber and Toro Rosso. Only 2 retirements so far, and they consist of Daniel Ricciardo, a suspension problem putting him off the circuit and into the barriers, and then a puncture for Nick Heidfeld. I think it was at the Beckett's complex. But just those 2 at the moment. Sergio Perez in 17th place. Not been a good race for Ferrari, unfortunately. So Timo Glock in 12th, and that's a slow Timo Glock. I think he's going to become the 3rd retirement of the race. Look at him hacksawing at the wheel. I think that's well, it was a puncture, but now he's biffed it into the barriers petulantly. At least he's far enough away from the circuit that the debris won't make it onto there, so that'll keep the drivers happy enough. Bianchi in 9th place, so let's see what he can do. He is 2.1 seconds behind Mark Webber, and it's confirmed a suspension failure for Timo Glock. Webber is 4/10 of a second behind Sebastian Vettel, so I'd imagine he's going to be making a move in the next few laps or so. And Vettel's still not that far behind Alonso, he's only 1.3 seconds. If Webber gets past, as Sergio Perez overtakes somebody for 15th place, did it look like a BMW Sauber? Could well have been. But yeah, if Webber gets past Vettel quickly, then he has a chance at taking 6th off of Fernando Alonso. And he's looking at the lead gap. The new fastest lap for Jenson Button. Oh, there's no front wing on that BMW Sauber. So yeah, that explains why Sergio Perez was able to overtake him quite easily going into the Abbey complex. So Nico Hülkenberg having a pit stop to make. with a few laps to go for repairs. When looking at the gap actually, Jensen's just pulled out 6.3 seconds over Raikkonen. Raikkonen has lost a lot of time somewhere. I mean, he's still half a minute ahead of Sato, but yeah, Raikkonen, yeah, his tyres are getting a bit old. Or Jensen Button's new tyres are that powerful. Yeah, settle for second, Kimi, you'll be alright there. You'll keep the pressure on Sato, and you'll keep Jensen honest. Vettel losing a bit of time to Fernando Alonso. There is Alonso in 6th. Vettel 2.2 seconds behind the Spaniard, as Sato in 3rd place. It was Montoya actually who had lost his front wing against something, because Hulkenberg is up there in 12th place, and Montoya had obviously hit something. Webber has taken Vettel for 7th place, so now his next target is Fernando Alonso for 6th, and with 7 and a bit laps to go, that's definitely doable, especially as Webber had to make an unscheduled pit stop. That's Felipe Massa we're looking at. Seen quite a lot of him in this race, and I'm not too sure why, because he's not really featured in this race at all. Jensen Button going through Stowe corner, 6.7 seconds ahead of Kimi Raikkonen, who probably settled for 2nd place now. Through Beckett goes Paul Di Resta, and he's hit the apexes quite nicely there. He's currently in 16th place ahead of Robert Kubica in the Renault. He's gained a few positions since the last time we saw him. Still not enough to challenge for any points, mind you, but yeah, nothing to be too ashamed about. You can see Jensen really pulling away now in the final stint, and with that fastest lap as well, giving the British crowd something to cheer about. In fact, there's 2 reasons for the British crowd to cheer, because Button's in 1st and Hamilton's in 4th place. A relatively good day for the Brits, actually. Button on pole, at the moment fastest lap, and if he takes the win, that will be a grand slam. Pole, fastest lap and win. We like to see those for statistic purposes. What's this? Alba's putting a lap on Montoya. 5th place Alba's now. And that'll be a good result for Albers. He did start 4th on the grid, but in a Force India which could well have been using a softer compound of tyre, because we saw Adrian Sutil, well, we've seen him not feature in this race that much, except for going backwards. So if Force India are running a softer tyre, then Albers has done quite well to stay up in 5th place. Alonso versus Webber, yeah, that's definitely not settled. It was just 1.3 seconds between those two. Could be seeing a battle in the closing stages. And for Webber, it'll do his championship. Well, with Button, Raikkonen and Sato in the top 3 of the race, Webber's championship challenge needs a bit of a kickstart. And he needs a bit of fortune if he's going to keep up with those 3. He's only 1 second behind Alonso. If he can get past, he'll do a bit of damage limitation. That was another new fastest lap for Jensen Button. 1:19.3, I think that was. As through Brooklands goes Di Resta. Out of Brooklands goes Di Resta, and into Luffield goes the Scotsman. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's from Bathgate. Now into the same complex goes Takuma Sato, but he is quite a bit further ahead of Paul Di Resta on the track. In fact, pretty much 2/3 of a lap in front. As Albers in 5th place now goes through that very section. I'm just looking actually, Sato versus Hamilton's not settled just yet. Imagine the British crowd will be giving Hamilton at least 1/4 of a second a lap, maybe even as much as half a second, on pure spirit, running on. It's officially a hybrid system. You've got the naturally aspirated V8 engine in the back of the Red Bull, and it's being electrically charged by the cheers of the British crowd. We look at Hulkenberg in 12th place, and Webber's taken Alonso. Webber has passed Alonso for 6th place, so that will give Toyota more useful points, 25 plus 8. That will give them 33 points and essentially extend the championship lead over McLaren, as Vettel is under pressure from Jules Bianchi. Jules Bianchi looking for 8th place. Now, is he? No, he's still not going the correct way, but yeah, that's your own fault, Jules. Through Stowe Corner, Vettel hanging on to 8th place at the moment, but heavily under pressure from the Williams, who's going to try and have a look at the inside into Club Corner, but Vettel moved over a little bit under braking to defend his position, and grimly hanging on to 8th place. I think Barrichello's safe in 10th place pretty much, as off the track goes Felipe Massa, and as a result goes a lap down on Sato and Hamilton. The battling Sato and Hamilton is just 3/4 of a second, well, slightly less than that, 7/10 of a second, as both of those two go through Beckett's onto Chapel. Having a look at Massa, but we need to look a bit further up. I don't think Hamilton's close enough to have a lunge into Stowe Corner, but certainly quicker at this moment. 4/10 the gap as they went through that first sector. Di Resta versus Kubica for 16th place, going through Abbey. So we have got battles in the closing stages, some more important than others, but with 4 laps to go, this is quite nice to watch. There is the battle for 3rd, the final podium place. Can Hamilton make it 2 Brits on the podium? Sato going through Bridge, now switching to Jenson Button, putting the lap on Rubens Barrichello, and battles Bianchi up the inside of Vettel going to Stowe Corner, and he's done it! Jules Bianchi up into 8th place, but no, Vettel was still hanging on round the outside. That is a grudge match till the end, as we switch back to the battle for 16th. There's battles all over the place now, I'm liking it. Through Beckett's goes Di Resta. Out of Beckett's goes Di Resta and Kubica together. Now is Kubica going to ignore advice? Well, he's not ignoring advice. He's up the inside into Stowe Corner. Can he manage it? Or is Di Resta going to hang on round the outside? He is doing. Now switching back to Sato versus Hamilton. And now that is Barrichello versus Bianchi. Bianchi's still right behind Vettel, as Jenson Button puts a lap on Vettel. So now, can Bianchi take advantage of that? Going into Copse Corner, the gap just 1/4 of a second as they cross the line. 3 laps to go. And Kubica having a look into Bridge. That's not a conventional overtaking opportunity. And quite rightly so, he had to back out of that one. Di Resta versus Kubica into Luffield now. The gap between Sato and Hamilton, just less than 2/10 of a second. And keep an eye out on that one as we look at Massa in 18th place. Not really what we need to be looking at. We need to be looking at Sato and Hamilton, particularly Sato and Hamilton, but there's now a 3-way dice for 8th place between Vettel, Bianchi and Barrichello. That's Kimi Räikkönen going through Club Corner. Quite lonely now, he's 9.7 seconds behind Jenson Button. And there will be just 2 more laps to go after this one. There's Webber in 6th, 17.5 seconds behind Christian Albers, but pretty comfortable in 6th place now. Off the track goes Di Resta, that was at Stowe Corner, and Kubica must have taken advantage of that surely. Pretty sure Kubica has taken 16th place off of Di Resta. So Di Resta's spirited hold on 16th has now gone away, as another new fastest lap for Button is broken into the 1:19.2s. And Bianchi's just taken Sebastian Vettel for 8th place, somewhere on this lap, as Hamilton still challenges Takuma Sato for 3rd place. As rounding Abbey goes Massa. Keep an eye out in front. Priory in Brooklands. It's still Sato hanging on to 3rd from Lewis Hamilton. And Albers looking quite good in 5th place. Now this is it. Hamilton versus Vettel. I don't think Vettel was close enough coming out of Luffield to make a move work. Into Copse Corner. And there might be a battle for 9th place between Vettel and Barrichello in the final couple of laps. Vettel dropping back from Jules Bianchi now. So it's now a battle for 9th between Vettel and Barrichello. There is Bianchi going through Priory, just slightly missing the apex. And through Brooklands. There you can see Vettel and Barrichello, they're about to duel for 9th place. And Sato versus Hamilton, still very close, less than a tenth of a second. This is now the final lap of the race. And keep an eye out further back, we may see, in fact Jensen has just gone into his final lap. As is Kimi Raikkonen, these two still on their penultimate lap. Sato defending a little bit, moving into the middle and then back to the outside, going into Abbey. And now into Bridge. Hamilton needs a good run out of Luffield if he's going to challenge for 3rd place going into Copse Corner. Can he do it? Well, we switch the Jensen Button. Race leader going through Club Corner. And wouldn't this be a fantastic result for himself if he was to hold on and win in front of his adoring British fans? Sato versus Hamilton. Across the start-finish line, it was less than 0.2 of a second, but at the moment, Sato still hanging on. Now we shuffle through to find Jensen Button. There he is. He's in the final sector now. And with this, I'm pretty sure he'll retake the championship lead over Takuma Sato, because Sato only held about a 6-point lead over Button in the championship. But with this, Jensen Button exits Woodcote, has got to put a lap on Fernando Alonso, but as he does that, he wins the British Grand Prix. And keep an eye out further back because Kimi Raikkonen must come home in 2nd place. There he goes. Kimi Raikkonen takes 2nd for McLaren BMW. And Takuma Sato, can he hang on for 3rd place? There is his teammate Matthias Lauda. And he's pulled out slightly over Lewis Hamilton, about a tenth and a bit. So maybe Sato has got that one safe as we look at, that was Perez and then Kubica crossing the line, 15th, 16th. And then Di Resta 17th. And further back, Sato, there he is in 3rd place. And he's just about hung on to that one, so it will only be one Brit on the podium, but Hamilton putting up a good fight to finish 4th. Christian Albers will be coming home in 6th place for Force India, more useful points for them. There's Montoya down in 19th after a broken front wing. And pretty poor race pace, it has to be said. Webber, 6th place, about to cross the line now. And then the final driver on the lead lap will be Fernando Alonso, who's pretty safe in 7th place. Here he comes. And that's pretty much it now. Once he crosses the line, there it is. Joe Bianchi 8th, Vettel 9th, and Barrichello getting a point for Renault in 10th place. So, quick recap. Button, Raikkonen, Sato, Hamilton, Albers, Webber. And then Alonso, last driver on the lead lap. And then Bianchi 8th, and then Vettel 9th. So we've got both Red Bulls in the top 10, and Rubens Barrichello in 10th place. So that was the first race in Britain, because we move over from the Northamptonshire countryside all the way to Derbyshire, I believe, for the European Grand Prix held at Donington Park. So we shall see you for then.